Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's always a little bit nervous here right when the live stream starts because it's kind of like, oh, I don't know if I'm actually live. It says that I'm live, but I don't know if any of you are actually out there watching. But I appreciate you joining me here for this first live stream that I've been doing. So what we're going to do is paint a little landscape up here and just have some fun, basically. So what I'm going to start off with, I'm just using a little clipboard here as a palette, so kind of adapt and overcome. I'm going to start off with a sky, and I'm thinking it's going to be a blue sky up here, and maybe there'll be a little bit of water here as well. So what I'm going to start off with is a little bit of thick body acrylic, cobalt blue hue. I'll throw that down on there. And then I'm also going to grab a little bit of a lighter blue. So as we go along, what's going to happen is I'll start off darker in the sky up top, and then I'm going to work my way down and get a little bit lighter blue towards the horizon line. And that'll kind of give it a feeling of depth as you're looking away at the sky. You get a little bit of a darker color gradually fading down, something that's a little bit lighter in value as you get further away from you. It's atmospheric perspective. So it's one of the key things that really kind of helps to sell the illusion of depth. It really makes it look real in this. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to get a little bit of water on my brush. These are acrylic paints that I'm using. I'm just using a little 1-inch brush here. So I'll go into my darker color of blue here and mix in a little bit of this thinner, lighter blue paint. And we'll start off making our sky up top here. I always thought that skies are fun to do just because it's kind of filling the canvas with a lot of paint, kind of willy-nilly, filling it in here and there. Feel free as you're going along. I might not be able to get to every comment, but I'm keeping an eye on the comment stream over there if you have a question or comment or anything like that. You can throw in there. I just figured that I do this live stream because, I don't know, I guess coronavirus lockdown is still kind of in the midst of it. It's kind of fun just to share this, and I know that I haven't been painting nearly as often as I'd like to be, so kind of bring everybody into the studio, so to speak. It's kind of a nice thing to have, just to kind of give a sense of community, togetherness, and makes it a little bit more fun, a little bit less lonely. So again, like I said, I'm going to go into a little bit more of this lighter color of blue paint as I work my way down, because I really think that that is one of the main things that helps to make a sky really come together. So we got our first comment in. Any happy little clouds today? Of course there will be, you know it. Yeah, Bob Ross was a big inspiration to me, actually. He's maybe between junior and senior year of college for me, I think. Maybe it was even earlier than that. I was sitting on the couch one day, and I happened to just be channel surfing, and I stumbled across The Joy of Painting, which was Bob Ross's show. And that was what really got me into painting. I saw it going on, and I had done some, if any of you know what this is out there, Warhammer 40K. It's a tabletop war game with little miniatures that you put together and paint. That was really my big exposure to painting prior to seeing Bob Ross on there. And I enjoyed the heck out of painting those little miniatures, but I had never really thought about doing canvas paintings or landscapes or anything like that. But I saw him doing it, and I mean, anybody who's ever seen the Bob Ross episode knows that he's just so happy when he paints, so calm and serene. It's like, man, I really want to give that a shot. And just looking at it, I think I could probably do that. So I did, and the first result was not the best, but it was good enough that it really kind of inspired me to keep going. That's kind of how I got to be where we are today, honestly, with this. So with that, kind of got a little sky dropped in. Trying to get a little bit more of that gradation. I'll go into a little bit lighter blue as we go even further down here. And I'll probably try to thin out the paint as we go. down even more so that a little bit more of the white of the canvas shows through as well. I'm going to blur this in so that the horizon line isn't super well defined, because we'll get that through the other things that are in the painting in the background rather than just through the sky. So with that, I'm going to let that dry a bit, and I'll go, maybe I'll put some mountains in the background. They'll be far back there though, so I'm not going to put them in super well defined. They'll be a little bit blurry, a little bit far away. And what I'm going to do with that, excuse me for stepping out of the frame, but I'll put in some of that same blue color, and I'll grab a little bit of phthalo green. So I want to create a color that's still light blue, but delineates itself from the sky. So you'll still be able to see a little bit of a break here. So I've got a little bit of my thicker green paint that's on there. And I'll go into that. I'll take it in some of the blue, and I'll make a little bit of a bluish green color. It's coming out a little bit more green than maybe I would have liked, but that's all right. I'll just add a little bit more blue. And we'll see how something like this comes in. So I'm just going to create kind of a base layer of something that's way off in the distance. So atmospheric perspective, like I mentioned, means that things change in appearance as they go further back into the canvas. And really, to create the illusion of depth, what you want to set up is kind of planes on the canvas itself, where your eye can see in subtle ways that there's space in between things. And one of the easiest ways to do that is by using atmospheric perspective. So not only do things get smaller as they get further away, but they also become slightly more bluish and kind of a whitish blue in color. And that's just the result of traveling through so many more air particles. The light that's bouncing off of these hills kind of that we have here, traveling through so many more air particles. And I'm going to try to kind of keep an eye on the clock here. Kind of want this to be maybe 30 or 35 minutes just to kind of start off and try this whole thing out, see how it goes, see how people react to it, what people are thinking, if they like it, if they don't like it. There are other things that we can change, that kind of thing. So keep an eye on the clock. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just kind of going to pull down along what I might see to be like the angle of the mountain. So I'm just going to pull down. And you see that as I'm pulling down like that, we're getting a little bit of wispiness here. I realize that I only have a one camera setup, so maybe not quite as fancy as the Joy painting or anything like that. But the lines at the bottom are becoming much more wispy and much more, they have a lot more white in between them. So they look much more, maybe a little bit misty, further away, a little bit less distinct. And that's kind of what I want. I want that to have that appearance that it's defined at the top, but as you get towards the bottom, you get more of a indeterminate sort of, not quite sure where things are going. You get a little bit of mist in between the two layers. And that's going to help people's eyes read this as being separate mountains. It's going to appear to be much more of a three-dimensional space if we have this little wispiness in between. Because if you have things that run right into one another, maybe it looks okay, and maybe people can tell what's happening, but it makes it more difficult to read. When somebody looks at the painting, they don't necessarily think, oh, okay, this is in front of this, and they don't necessarily grasp instinctively those relationships between where things are in space. A lot of times, comic book artists and other artists, when they're creating art together, like some sort of a jam session or something like that, we'll ask each other, how does this read? Hold it up, and basically what they're saying there is, when you look at this, what does it look like? Like, can you grasp what's happening here? Just with a quick glance, do you understand the effect that I'm going for and the relationships between these things? So for now, at least, I think that's we're doing pretty good on those little foothills. There's going to be a whole bunch of other little guys that are going to be going in front of your trees and bushes and hills and stuff like that that are going to be a little bit closer to the camera or the observer. Now, one of the things about acrylic paint that's different from maybe oil paint or other types of paint that you might see is that they dry very quickly. So this layer of blue is not perfectly dry yet, but it is dry enough that I can go through and paint on top of it without worrying about smudging things together or anything like that. It's both kind of a blessing and a curse, honestly. One of the great things about oil painting is that you can really get in there, and because it dries so slowly, you can make really fine gradations of color. But with acrylic, you kind of are a little bit more limited in terms of that aspect of it. Can't necessarily get those really fine gradations and mix things together really well. But the advantage that you get with that is that you can paint layers on top of one another in rapid succession, and it's not a problem. You don't have to wait for a week maybe while the oil paint dries. You can create a new layer almost immediately. I did want to make a quick note about the types of paint that I use too, because a lot of people ask about that kind of thing, the materials and everything. I use all kinds of paint, and I'm really a self-taught guy. Outside of a couple of episodes of Bob Ross that I've watched and a lot of YouTube videos here and there, I've not taken any formal classes or anything like that. So a lot of my experience in painting and what I do comes from feeling things out and using what I have available to me and experimenting. So you see that with like this light blue, this is a very thin paint that you can pick up at Walmart's hobby department for like 99 cents a tube. Whereas something like this guy's white paint that you see here is very thick. It's called Liquitex Heavy Body. And it confers certain advantages, but it's also much, much more expensive. A tube of that might run $8, $9, $10 for, basically the same size as the 99-cent tube. So I guess the one thing that I do want to say is that it's not necessarily about the materials that you're using. You don't necessarily, people think a lot of times with art, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy the greatest, paints, the most expensive stuff on the shelf. I don't think that that's necessarily the right path to go. With this thicker paint, what you can definitely do is layer it up, and you can give it almost a texture on the canvas so that you've got an actual third dimension of puffiness to the paint. And that's really, you can make some really neat effects. And with that, you can even make it where you can see the brush strokes in the paint, which is a really neat thing to be able to do. Well, with that being said, if painting is something that you like to try, I would definitely recommend just picking up a simple palette of paints from, Hobby Lobby, or like I said, even the Walmart craft department has some stuff that you can use, and just go for it. See what the properties of your props that you have, your different paints, your different brushes are, and try to get a feel for them. I think that that produces a lot. I don't know. It produces very cool results because you get to see the hand of the artist in them. It's not necessarily all in the actual devices that you have. A lot of times I see on YouTube, and I even fall prey to it sometimes too, where you see people talking about comic book artists that they see, or different people who are doing portrait painting or something like that, and say, oh, what kind of pen is that? Or, oh, what pencil is he using? What kind of pastels or something like that? I don't know. To me, it's just the skill that I've obtained, in addition to watching, like I said, those episodes of Bob Ross, has really been about experimenting, feeling your way through things, and if it turns out great, fantastic. If it doesn't turn out great, there's no reason that you have to show it to anybody. Fold it up, throw it in the garbage, or probably don't throw it in the garbage, actually. Keep it as a reminder for where you came from and what you tried and how far you've come. But, There's no pressure. Just go in there and have fun with it. Just gonna throw in a couple of little floaty clouds, maybe a couple of little bits of wispiness in the background there. At this point, I'm not really thinking too much about what I'm doing. Just kind of putting in some basic cloud shapes. And then the spots where you want highlights, I'm just going in and adding a little bit of additional pure white over the top of them, like so. And like I mentioned, I don't know how far I'm going to get in this half hour. I don't think I've ever actually timed myself while I paint. I don't know, I think that might be a little bit, if you're going for speed, then more power to you. But for me, I don't know, I tend to get a little lost when I paint. Just kind of have fun. Play with the colors on the canvas, add little trees and stuff here and there. So I think that's about good with the cloud cover. And what I'll do is I'll just go in, kind of clear some of the paint off of my brush, and then just kind of give these little gentle zhuzh at the very end, because I think it softens the edges, which I think are really important. It's a really important thing with clouds. Usually you don't see clouds wandering around with like straight razor edges on them or anything like that. So then this little bit of wispiness kind of takes the edge out of it, makes them feel a little bit more playful and a little bit more organic. So just kind of going in and sort of tickling some of these edges so you get a little bit of the, you zoom in really close, which unfortunately I can't do with my current rig, but you can see the little fibers of the canvas poking through in spots that have picked up little pieces of white paint. You can see little tiny edges of the brush strokes in there. They really, I think, just overall lend to a much softer look. Like I said, much more organic, like you would actually see clouds out in the real world. All right. So with that, I think it's about time that we move a little bit more into the foreground. So the clouds kind of opened up an opportunity for this layer of paint to dry a bit. And what I'm going to do is probably put in a quick little tree line going across here. And then I think we'll put a shoreline. And then I think we'll have maybe some water down below. Maybe a waterfall. That might make things kind of fun. So I will wash that brush off. With acrylic paint, it is really important that you get your brushes into water very quickly after you're done using them and make sure that you get the paint off of them, because the paint really does dry quite quickly. And if you allow it to dry on the bristles, those bristles are going to be extremely stiff and not really terribly useful for you after the fact. Once the paint dries on the bristles, that's kind of game over for the brush. So you just want to make sure that you are mindful of that and that you take care of those brushes and make sure that you get those brushes into the water. So I'm going to go through with a different brush here. This one's got a little bit stiffer of bristles on it. And I want that because what I'm going to be doing here is making trees. So I'm going to be pulling up a lot and making sure that those strokes are very well defined so that I can make it look like there's maybe some little trees growing far away back there. So I'm just going to start on the edge, just pull up. I've got a mixture of brown and black that I'm using here. Not sure how well this is showing up on the actual camera. I hope it's coming in well. I'm starting from the bottom and going up. And there's an important reason for that. When you're making a tree and you're making like a forest, trees at the very base are much thicker than they are up at the top. So I found that it's much easier for me to produce that same effect by going bottom to top on these sort of things. And I might fill in just a bottom layer that kind of gives solidity to the ground there. Because I think if you don't do that, at that point it kind of you have to be careful to avoid a look that just looks like a whole bunch of tiny sticks that are poking up. Because that's not really, it's not going to look right, it's not going to read right. People are going to be kind of questioning what exactly is happening in your painting at that point. Which is, again, not exactly what you want. Just march my way across. Just like this. And with these, I'll probably want to put in that same area of white mistiness that we talked about with the foothills there. So at the bottom of this, I might stretch it out a little bit and create that, just to get a second layer. I'll also probably go in, and I think we're going to probably run out of time before I can do this, but hit these with a little bit of color as well, so that they're not just brown and black little twiggy stick areas, but that they actually have a little bit of color, like maybe there's some highlights from the sun hitting some of the leaves that are on them. I might actually have enough canvas or paint on the canvas to just do that with what I have here. So I'll just grab what's here and I'll pull down a little bit, like I did before. It's going to create a little bit of this effective fuzziness at the bottom, maybe a little bit of mist. I'm going to go across it just to take some of those brush strokes out, make it look a little bit smoother. I'm going in here and fixing a spot that had a horizontal brush stroke in here. Everything really does need to be vertical or mostly vertical in that to make it look right. Just because when you have that one brush stroke that kind of goes through, there's a little bit of dissonance in the eye that's created at that point. You know, somebody's eye is going to migrate very quickly to that location. Even if they can't put their finger on it, they'll know that something doesn't look quite right there. So it's a good thing just to kind of smooth out some of those rougher lines. I'm going in and just dabbing on some of these branches to soften them up again because they are far away. So there should be a little bit of distinctness that you see there, but in general, it's still far away. So there still needs to be a little bit of a feeling of distance and a feeling that you can't see this 100% sharply at this point. So at this point, what I'm going to do is put in another layer of hills here. And I'm thinking by the end of this painting, what I'm going to do is have a little waterfall in the middle that spills down here, and maybe spreads out like we're kind of at the base of maybe like a little stream or something that's coming out of this waterfall. So as long as I've got the blue still on my palette here, I'll use that for that water effect. I'll lay it down. Let me get a larger brush here. And with this, one of the things with painting is a lot of it is building up layers. So I'm not necessarily, trying to paint things exactly within the lines, so to speak. I just know that Hey guys, I don't know if you're with me or not. The audio cut out. My actual internet connection just disconnected for a bit there, so that was no fun. My apologies for that. But I think really all that we missed there was just throwing in a little bit of the additional water there. I don't think that we really missed a whole lot of anything as it is anyway. So I'll keep going for maybe 5 or 10 more minutes, and then maybe we'll pick this up on another live stream at some point. I'll be sure to post the any updates that would be happening with that live stream to the JStan Studios page on Facebook. So feel free to follow that. And whenever we do this and get together, we will get together. I see that we did have a comment that came through. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, like I said, I was mostly self-taught, mostly just Bob Ross videos, YouTube videos. It's amazing how much you can learn just in ways. Amazing how much free stuff there is out there, free instructional courses and everything like that. It is really, really a crazy thing. So while we were gone, what I did is I put a little bit of my raw sienna paint on the canvas. And this is just basically a lighter brown than we were using before. It's a little bit thicker than that stuff was. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to lay in my second layer of hills here that will go kind of in front of this layer of trees in the background. So just get a little bit of that on the brush. This was one of the brushes that I used earlier. Just kind of cleaned it off, wiped it out. I'm going to grab a little bit of this brown and black color to kind of darken it a little bit, because I don't want it to be super, super bright or super All right, guys. My apologies for all the technical issues seem to be popping up here. It looks like the internet just keeps cutting out on me for whatever reason. So at that point, I'm probably just going to end the video. I'm just putting in a little bit of this kind of distant sandy color that I'll build up on at a later point. So again, my apologies for the internet kind of cutting in and whacking out on us. But so I'll probably just end the broadcast here. Maybe we'll come back to this at a later time, or maybe I'll just finish it off camera and post the final results to the Facebook page. But feel free to go follow that, JStan Studio on Facebook. It's the same thing on Instagram as well, actually. So I post mostly the same updates, but every now and then something new comes out on one, not the other. But feel free to join there. I appreciate you joining me here. This is it's been fun, even just all the weirdness that I've been kind of juggling off camera. So again, thanks for joining me for this first one. Appreciate it very much, and hope to see you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.